Tell me about the city, because, I left the city almost 9 years ago. And you've spoken about these kind of false idols in the city. Again, back to me when I was 7 years old, I just thought that if I accomplished something, then maybe I'd have some worth. Maybe I think that's what I was doing. And I taught myself that money would buy me happiness. And I was in my head for 40 years, Michael. And at one point, I was watching my quarterly income, and they paid us quarterly at ICAP. And I realized that as my income went up, I became less happy. And it took my 4-year degree at MIT to realize there was a reverse correlation. And I better do something different with my life, or I'm going to be upset. I was alone. I was depressed. I was drinking myself to death. I had no family and no friends. And I thought, I got to stop doing this. And I started doing this, which is taking me on a different adventure. But it's hard to get out of that feeling in the city. What do you see there, especially as a Christian, and why do so many people get stuck in it?
Well, I think you put your finger on it. It's money. I mean, when I started, when I was 18, I was, I had no clue really, but I just worked hard, and I was sent to Germany to learn German, worked in a German firm over there. It was when I was 21, great experience. Came back and then climbed the ladder, became one of the youngest sort of ring traders in the open outcry market, and sort of climbed up and realized actually, when I got into this very sort of powerful firm that sort of was a global physical trader merchant of metals, and particularly copper, that I realized actually money was at the heart of it. It was rather like an eye-opener. I mean, when in my sort of mid-20s, that actually it was all about money. And I'd been sort of naive not to realize that beforehand. But once I realized that, everything was sort of, you could all your thoughts worked, well, what's the risk reward? How much can we lose? How much profit can we make, etc. So you sort of learn these things. But then becoming a Christian, I was doing well. I mean, we were been married 5 years, started having children. I was doing reasonably well, and then all of a sudden, this whole area of being a Christian and working in the city. I remember I used to travel in on the train and I'd be thinking about God and be reading the Bible and be thinking about all sorts of questions and talking this sort of stuff. And then I'd get in the elevator in the city, go up there. God will be gone. The whole day would be gone. Get in the lift at the end of the day, God will come back. And it suddenly occurred to me after a while, God's not with me. I'm not with him in the workplace. It's all about money. And then that whole area of developing, growing, in biblical understanding, the studies, etc., listening to sermons, but praying and talking to other Christians. That I was thinking, well, the city. I often had people saying to me, "How can you, as a Christian, work in the city? It's all about money. How can you do that?" And I had to think about that. And then what it did was it sort of cleared up the idols that are in the city. And I think particularly it became very clear to me, money is obviously an idol. You described it yourself, Brian. It gives you everything, apparently. It gives you the freedom. It gives you the house, the healthcare, the holidays, the reputation. It seems to be the God to bow down to, all right? You've also got the company, the whole corporate culture where you're climbing that ladder. It's a competitiveness with one another, and there's a bowing down to the company. And when I actually joined, when I was with Phoebe Salomon at the end of the 80s, they invited me onto the global board governing all their trading, and I was going to be in charge of base metals. And I was invited to this board, and I just thought, well, okay, I'll think about it. And there was a sort of little bell ringing in the back of my head, and I thought, well, I'll go away and I'll come back to you tomorrow, Marty, and I'll tell you. And I sort of prayed about it, and And then in the middle of the night, I woke up and I just thought, I need to tell him I'm a Christian. And I need to tell him there's more important things than the company. There's more important things than money. So the next day I went up to him. I said, look, Marty, I'm very happy to do this, but you need to know something.
This is a managing director of Solomon Brothers.
This was the boss in New York. Okay. And he was a Jewish chap. And I said, look, I'm a Christian, so number one, there's God. Number two, there's a family, and then there's a company. And you may rest assured, I will work hard, but there's that priority. And these things are important to me, and I won't sacrifice them. And he actually said to me, I have Talmudic studies every week. And I said, well, very good, but I mean, it was sort of bouncing the conversation about, but that whole area of prioritizing God and family before work was quite difficult. And you had to concentrate on it, and you had to be disciplined. So, city lunches, okay? You were at ICAP. I mean, I know they used to love city lunches. I mean, they were the thing. And I just had to learn, how do I not have city lunches where you're drinking and talking and, etc. And in the end, you have to learn to say no. And that was a big thing for me to learn, is to say no to these things, and no to go away on a weekend company get together, strengthening one another, where there's all sorts of things might be going on. Just say no, I'm with the family. And it didn't hurt me. Saying no didn't hurt me.
Yeah. I said no a few times to some of my clients, and they respected it.
Yeah.
I said, if you want to do that, there's a bunch of other brokers that can take you out there. Yeah. But I just don't do that.
Exactly.
We can do other things. We can go play squash. We can go do this. We can go do that. But I don't want to do that thing.
Exactly.
And surprisingly, it was okay, and they respected it if they understood it. My colleagues maybe not as much. But you were able to find that line in the city.
Yes. Well, in the end, I was ending up as a sort of boss. So I had to discipline myself, really. But even beforehand, it was just I was saying no, and they respected that. And I, as a Christian, I said to other Christians, don't be ashamed of the Lord. Don't be ashamed of Jesus. If you keep your head above the parapet, but as a Christian, don't be ashamed of him. Because if you are, I mean, in Mark it says, if you're ashamed of me, I'll be ashamed of you, which is a very tough verse, frankly. But just be upfront about it. And then I found that he was there and he was protecting me. I mean, people did respect, I mean, we were called the God Squad at times. Our Financial Times called us the God Squad in the city and that sort of thing. And I think, I've heard people sort of respected us, because we had the sort of, I guess, more integrity than they thought city people should have.